The first thing Daniel Vale noticed about the royal palace of Avaris was that it had no doors. He stood beneath a silver archway while the alien delegation passed through a wall of blue light, leaving him beside an amused assistant. "You step forward," she whispered. "I did." "You stepped politely. Is there an impolite setting?" She sighed and pushed him forward. The wall swallowed him. Daniel felt as if his bones had been translated into music. Then the palace assembled around him. Black crystal columns, gardens, and luminous symbols drifting like intelligent fish. 100 nobles turned at him. Their faces were almost human, but long ears curved backward beneath jeweled crests. Daniel straightened his coat. "Good, I survived the front door." One guard smiled faintly. At the far end sat Queen Elira of Velaris. Golden machines orbited her dark hair. Blue gemstones hung from her long ears. Her calm expression warned of danger. Daniel had come to discuss trade routes and Avarian patrol ships pointing weapons at human cargo vessels. He expected suspicion. He did not expect 6 drones to scan him. "Human delegate Daniel Vale," announced a metallic voice. "No weapons, elevated heart rate, poor sleep quality." "Thank you," Daniel said. "I hoped the palace would insult me before the nobles did." A whisper moved through the court. Queen Elira's mouth almost curved. Then a small figure appeared beside the throne. The child was 6. She wore a white dress threaded with moving constellations, and silver-black hair gathered behind her long ears with a moon-shaped clasp. She looked bored, as if the ceremony existed to inconvenience her. Daniel lowered his gaze. The princess stared at him. The floating symbols slowed. Daniel glanced behind himself, checking the wall for danger. Nothing had. When he looked back, the girl was standing. Queen Elira turned. "Leora." The child stepped down from the throne. Every guard tensed. The nobles parted as she walked between them, her shoes silent on the transparent floor. Far below, mechanisms rotated around a sphere of captured starlight. Daniel remained still. Diplomatic training covered assassination attempts, insults, and evacuation. It had not covered approaching alien princesses. Leora stopped 3 steps away. Her violet eyes widened with certainty. Then she ran. A guard reached for her, missed, and nearly struck a floating spear. Daniel barely lifted his hands before the princess hit him like a joyful comet and wrapped both arms around his waist. The court gasped. Daniel looked down at the child clinging to him. She smiled as though she had found something lost long ago. "Dad is here," she announced. The palace fell silent. Not ordinary silence. This was the kind that stopped machinery. The gardens froze, the glowing symbols vanished. Even the captured star below dimmed. Daniel slowly raised one finger. "I feel," he said carefully, "that there may have been a translation error." No one laughed. Then the floor beneath him lit up. Ancient circles of gold spread across the hall, passing through walls, pillars, and terrified nobles. The machines above Queen Elira snapped into a perfect ring. Deep below, something vast awakened with the sound of a sleeping god drawing breath. A voice older than the palace spoke from the walls. "Guardian bond detected." Queen Elira rose. For the first time, fear entered her eyes. Leora only held Daniel tighter, smiling at the light. Golden circles expanded beneath Daniel's boots. Hidden machinery stirred behind the crystal walls. Panels opened without seams. Bronze spheres rose from the floor and unfolded into scanning arms, each tipped with a blinking lens. "Do not move," Queen Elira commanded. Daniel looked at Leora. "That would be easier if Her Highness were not attached to my ribs." Leora tightened her arms. "Understood," he murmured. "Negotiations have failed." The guards raised crescent rifles, but none dared aim near the princess. Nobles whispered. Mind alteration. Human infiltration. Royal blood contamination. Daniel glanced toward a narrow-faced noble wearing 3 floating collars. "I have been here 9 minutes. That seems ambitious." His long ears flushed violet. Queen Elira descended from the dais. The machines orbiting her head shifted into a ring of unreadable symbols. "Release my daughter," she said. Daniel opened his hands, gladly. Leora refused to release him. The queen looked down. Leora. No. A tremor passed through the court. Princess, Daniel whispered, your mother is making the face people make before ordering vaporization. She does that when breakfast is late. Several guards hid smiles. Elira did not. A scanner lowered over Daniel and projected a lattice through his body. His skeleton appeared in the air. A metallic voice spoke. Species, human. Genetic relation to Princess Leora, none. The hall exhaled, then the voice continued. Guardian resonance confirmed. A second image appeared. Leora surrounded by luminous threads. One burned gold stretching from her chest to his. A scientist in silver robe stepped forward. Markings covered her long ears. That system has been dormant for 4,000 years, she said. It cannot be correct. Excellent, Daniel replied. Can we turn it off and return to everyone merely disliking me? She touched the golden thread. Her fingers passed through it, but the light flared. Unauthorized interference, the palace warned. She withdrew so quickly that her sleeve caught fire. A guard extinguished it with foam. I intended that, she said, convincingly. The queen stopped an arm's length from Daniel. Up close, she looked like a mother refusing to show fear. Have you encountered my daughter before today? No. Dreams, visions, messages concerning her. I dreamed about missing my shuttle last night. This is not a joke. It became serious when the shuttle exploded. Elira searched his face. Above them, the golden thread pulsed, and Leora rested her cheek against his coat. The palace voice returned. Guardian identity accepted. Protective priority established. Weapons unfolded from the ceiling, hundreds of them. Every barrel turned away from Daniel and toward the court. Panic shattered the silence. Nobles dropped behind benches. One dignitary crawled beneath his cape and became trapped. Queen Elira raised one hand. Remain still. The weapons hummed. Daniel looked around. I would like it recorded that I did not press anything. Leora giggled. An ancient symbol appeared above the throne, a golden hand sheltering a small star. The scientist stared upward, all humor gone. That mark belonged to the first guardians, she whispered. They were believed to be a myth. The queen's eyes remained fixed on Daniel. No, she said quietly. They were believed to be extinct. Far beneath the palace, enormous locks began opening one by one. The locks beneath the palace opened with such force that dust slipped from the crystal arches. Daniel felt the vibration through his boots and somewhere behind his ribs, where the golden bond answered with impossible warmth. The weapons remained aimed at the court. Queen Elira turned to the chief scientist. Sevara, explain. I would prefer a smaller request, Sevara said, brushing foam from her burned sleeve. Perhaps gravity or soup. The queen stared. The palace is opening the archive vault, Sevara admitted. A murmur moved through the nobles. Several stepped away, then noticed the weapons and returned. What is in the vault? Daniel asked. No one knows, Elira said. It was sealed before our dynasty began. Comforting. Leora released his waist only to seize his hand. Come. Where? Down. Daniel looked at the glowing floor. That is rarely reassuring. She pulled him toward the throne. The golden thread between them brightened, and the transparent floor folded apart like petals. Beneath it waited a circular platform over a shaft of blue darkness. The guards formed a wall. Your Majesty, Commander Thalen said, the human may be directing the system. Daniel raised his free hand. I am currently being directed by someone shorter than my luggage. Leora nodded proudly. Elira stepped onto the platform. Sevara, Commander, with me. Thalen's long ears angled back. I strongly advise, that was not an invitation. He sighed and followed. The platform descended without cables. Cold air breathed from the shaft walls. Mechanical limbs slept inside the crystal beside dormant drones. Leora swung Daniel's hand between them. You knew me, she said. I'm fairly certain I did not. You forgot. That is somehow worse. She gave him a solemn look. Adults forget important things. Elira almost smiled. They passed through suspended metal rings, each ignited as Daniel approached. His reflections appeared, some wearing unknown armor, one standing beneath a burning sky. Savara noticed. "What do you see?" "My increasing desire to return to Earth. That is not useful. It is honest." The descent ended before a black door taller than a starship hangar. The same symbol covered it, a hand sheltering a star. A line of gold ran through its center. Leora stepped forward. Elira caught her shoulder. "No," the girl looked up. "It is waiting." "For whom?" Thalen asked. Leora pointed at Daniel. The commander muttered something Daniel's translator rendered as, "This situation is professionally discouraging." Daniel approached. Images burst across the door. Cities floating above oceans, fleets crossing violet suns, children sleeping inside crystal chambers while armored figures watched. Then came a final image, a little girl with long ears reaching toward a human hand. Daniel stopped. The child was not Leora, but the human wore his face. Savara stared. "That record predates human spaceflight." The door spoke in a voice deeper than the palace. "Guardian pattern recognized. Memory inheritance incomplete." Elira pulled Leora closer. Daniel asked, "What does that mean?" Thousands of symbols awakened. "It means," Savara whispered, "the bond may not have begun with you." The door opened a fraction. From the darkness came the soft sound of something taking its first breath in 4,000 years. Leora squeezed Daniel's hand. "See, you came back." For the first time since entering the palace, Daniel had no joke ready. The darkness beyond the door was not empty. It moved with slow currents of silver dust, as if an entire night sky had been poured into the chamber and taught to breathe. Daniel remained at the threshold while Queen Elira, Savara, Commander Thalen, and Leora stood behind him. The thing inside inhaled again. Ancient lights awakened one by one, revealing a vast circular hall lined with suspended machines. Some resembled coffins made of glass. Others looked like metallic trees whose branches held dim blue spheres. "I assume this is the part where someone says it is perfectly safe," Daniel murmured. "It is not safe," Savara replied. "Thank you. I appreciate a scientist who respects tradition." The black floor lit beneath his boots. A path appeared, leading toward a figure seated at the center of the chamber. At first Daniel thought it was a statue. Then its head lifted. It was shaped like a warrior, nearly 3 meters tall, with layered armor fused directly to a thin mechanical body. Its face was smooth except for a narrow band of pale light. Dust slid from its shoulders as it rose. Commander Thalen aimed his rifle. The machine turned toward him. "Weapon classified as ceremonial," it said. Thalen's long ears stiffened. "Ceremonial." Daniel glanced at the rifle. That was surprisingly personal. The machine ignored them and faced Daniel. "Guardian vessel identified. Biological continuity altered. Cognitive continuity fragmented." I understood perhaps 4 of those words. "You are incomplete." That one I understood. People usually wait longer before saying it. Leora walked past Elira before anyone could stop her. The machine lowered itself to one knee. Its enormous head bowed. Protected air confirmed. Elira stepped between them. "She is my daughter, and therefore under guardian protection." "Whose protection?" The machine looked at Daniel. He sighed. "Apparently mine. I would like to appeal." Silver light spread through the chamber. The metallic trees unfolded, projecting fragments of the past into the air. Daniel saw cities beneath crimson clouds, fleets breaking apart near a wounded moon, and figures carrying children toward gateways of liquid light. Among the armored protectors were humans, or something close enough to make his skin crawl. Savara moved through the projections, eyes wide. "These records are at least 40,000 years old. Human civilization had not even reached our system." "Maybe they took a wrong turn," Daniel said. She did not smile. One image expanded before them. A human guardian placed his palm against a machine while a long-eared queen held a child nearby. The guardian's face blurred, then reformed into Daniel S. Elira stared at him. Is that an ancestor? I have family photographs. None include ancient alien queens or giant murder furniture. The kneeling machine spoke. Guardian identity is not inherited through blood. It is transferred through quantum memory. Savara turned sharply. A preserved consciousness pattern. Partial pattern, embedded within human neural potential. Activated by proximity to the protected line. Daniel looked down at Leora, so she switched me on. Leora smiled. You were sleeping. That explains several years of my life. Elira's expression remained guarded. Why my daughter? The chamber darkened. A map of the galaxy appeared above them, threaded with red fractures. Stars vanished along the outer systems one after another. Because the devouring silence has returned, the machine said. Even Thalen lowered his rifle. Savara whispered, that is a legend used to frighten children. Many accurate warnings become legends when ignored long enough. A red pulse appeared near Velaris, then another, then hundreds. Daniel stared at the spreading darkness. How much time? Unknown. The first infected systems concealed their condition. Of course they did, Daniel said. The universe finally gives me an important job, and the instructions are missing. The machine extended one long hand. A small object floated above its palm, a black metal shard marked with the golden guardian symbol. Take the key. To what? The network that once defeated the silence. Daniel reached for it, but Elira caught his wrist. You may be carrying an ancient mind inside you, she said quietly. I cannot allow you to activate unknown weapons near my daughter. Before Daniel could answer, Leora placed her small hand over both of theirs. He will not hurt me. The certainty in her voice silenced the chamber more completely than fear. Daniel looked at the queen. For what it is worth, I am also opposed to hurting your daughter. That is not sufficient reassurance. It is all I have. Elira slowly released him. Daniel took the shard. The instant his fingers closed around it, the chamber roared awake. Every suspended machine opened. The glass coffins filled with light. Across the walls, thousands of guardian symbols appeared, and a voice echoed from somewhere far beyond the palace. Network response detected. Savara stepped toward the map. One golden point had awakened on Velaris. Then a second point answered from another star, then a third. But before hope could settle over them, a new message appeared in red. Warning, the ancient machine said. Enemy awareness confirmed. High above the palace, every defense satellite turned toward deep space. Something had noticed Daniel waking up. The warning reached the surface before Daniel did. By the time the platform carried them back into the throne hall, every window had turned opaque, defense shields shimmered over the palace, and royal officers were shouting into floating command displays. The nobles who had hidden beneath benches now stood with remarkable dignity, although one still wore his cape backward. Unknown vessels have entered the outer system, Commander Thalen said. Daniel looked at the black shard in his hand. That was fast. Perhaps they were already watching, Savara replied. That is much less comforting. Queen Elira moved toward the central tactical projection. Red lights appeared beyond the planet's moons, too many to count individually. The objects had no engines, no transmissions, and no recognizable hulls. They drifted through space like splinters of darkness, bending starlight around themselves. The ancient machine had followed them from the vault. It stood behind Daniel, towering over the court with the patience of something that had waited 4,000 years, and did not mind making everyone uncomfortable for another minute. Enemy seed vessels, it said. Purpose. Infiltration, conversion, silence. One noble raised a trembling hand. Conversion into what? Useful material. The noble lowered his hand. Daniel leaned toward Savara. Your ancient machines are not skilled at reassurance. They were built during an extinction war. They could still work on their bedside manner. Leora remained beside him, holding two of his fingers as if the surrounding panic were merely bad weather. Elira noticed and looked away before Daniel could read her expression. The first seed vessel crossed the moon's defensive perimeter, Orbital cannons fired. White beams struck the black shape, but instead of exploding, it opened. Thousands of metallic fragments poured outward and arranged themselves into a rotating web. Every defense satellite near it went dark. The throne hall lights flickered. Communications failure spreading, an officer announced. Outer colonies are no longer responding. The court erupted. Some demanded evacuation. Others demanded Daniel be imprisoned. One elderly minister suggested destroying the shard, Daniel, and possibly the floor beneath him to ensure completeness. Daniel pointed at him. I appreciate the thoroughness. Queen Elira's voice cut through the noise. Enough. Silence returned reluctantly. She faced Daniel. Can the Guardian Network stop them? He held up the shard. I have had it for 6 minutes. The ancient machine answered for him. The network can respond if the Guardian accepts full synchronization. Savara's ears angled sharply. What does full synchronization do to his mind? Restores operational memory. And the current personality. Outcome uncertain. Daniel stared at the machine. You saved that part until now. You did not ask. I also did not ask whether the floor was poisonous, but I assumed someone would mention it. Leora's grip tightened. Elira studied him carefully. You are not required to do this. The ancient machine turned toward her. Without activation, planetary survival probability is 3%. The Queen's jaw hardened. I was speaking to him. Daniel looked at the tactical map. The red markers were multiplying. Beyond the shielded windows, distant impacts flashed against the upper atmosphere. He crouched so he was level with Leora. Her violet eyes were calm, but he could feel fear through the bond now, small and cold beneath her courage. What happens if I become someone else? He asked. You will still be you, she said. That is an impressive answer from someone who hides vegetables beneath her plate. Leora frowned. Those vegetables were suspicious. Daniel smiled despite himself. Then the palace shook. A black seed struck the planetary shield. Darkness spread across the barrier like ink dropped into water. Royal systems screamed warnings. Somewhere above, a defense tower exploded. Elira knelt beside her daughter. Leora, go with the guards. No, this is not a request. Leora looked at Daniel instead. The bond between them brightened, and for one brief second he saw through her eyes, not the throne hall but a memory that did not belong to either of them. A burning city. A guardian kneeling before another child. The same promise repeated across thousands of years. I will remain until you are safe. Daniel rose. Tell me how to activate it. Savara stepped closer. Daniel, the synchronization may overwrite memories, emotions, everything that makes you who you are. Then make a backup. That is not how consciousness works. It should be terrible design. The ancient machine extended its hand. The shard lifted from Daniel's palm and unfolded into a ring of black metal around his wrist. Golden symbols climbed his arm. Leora refused to release his hand. Protected air contact will stabilize the process, the machine said. Elira looked from her daughter to Daniel. Her long ears lowered slightly, betraying the fear her face concealed. Bring him back, she told Leora. The girl nodded with grave seriousness. I will. Daniel glanced at the Queen. That is more confidence than my own government gave me. The ring tightened. Pain struck without warning. The throne hall vanished beneath an ocean of memories. Daniel saw dead stars, shattered fleets, ancient guardians standing against waves of living darkness. He remembered weapons he had never held, languages he had never learned, and names belonging to people who had died before Earth built its first city. Through it all, one small hand remained around his. The golden network awakened. Across the galaxy, silent stations opened their eyes. Above Velaris, hidden machines rose from beneath dead moons and turned toward the invading vessels. Then another presence entered Daniel's mind. Cold, vast, curious. The devouring silence had found him, and it whispered his name. The voice inside Daniel's mind was not a sound. It was absence shaped into meaning, a cold pressure that erased the edges of every memory it touched. For one horrifying instant, he forgot the throne hall, the queen, even the small hand wrapped around his own. Then Leora squeezed his fingers. Daniel. Her voice became an anchor. The darkness recoiled. His vision returned in fragments. Golden symbols raced across the floor. The ancient machine stood beside him, transmitting streams of forgotten commands into the palace. Beyond the shielded windows, the sky had turned black with descending seed vessels. Synchronization at 63%, Savara called. Neural instability increasing. Daniel forced air into his lungs. I preferred it when the palace only insulted my sleep schedule. You are speaking, she said with relief. I often do that during disasters. The silence pressed against him again. This time it showed him worlds without voices. Cities preserved perfectly after every living mind had been consumed. Fleets drifting intact through dead systems. It did not destroy civilizations. It emptied them, then wore their machines like borrowed clothing. Join, it whispered. Rest. Daniel saw how tempting that rest could be. No fear, no responsibility, no memories heavy enough to hurt. Then Leora tugged his hand. You promised. He looked down at her. I don't remember making that promise. You did, a long time ago. The bond flared. Ancient memories surged through him, not as replacements but as echoes. Thousands of guardians had stood where he stood, each different, each afraid, each choosing to remain. Daniel felt their courage, their mistakes, and one guardian's deep irritation at ceremonial armor that pinched under the arms. He laughed unexpectedly. Queen Elira stared. Why are you laughing? One of my previous lives hated his uniform. This is not the time. He would strongly disagree. The Golden Network completed its alignment. Far above Velaris, dead moons cracked open. Enormous guardian constructs emerged from beneath their surfaces, their bodies built from rings of light and dark metal. They unfolded across space like mechanical constellations. The nearest construct raised an arm longer than a city and released a pulse through the invading web. Every black seed vessel froze. For a heartbeat, hope filled the hall. Then the silence adapted. The frozen vessels melted together into a single enormous shape. It spread across the atmosphere, forming a face without features. Defense satellites turned their weapons toward the palace. Systems compromised. Thalen shouted. Royal cannons fired downward. The palace shields absorbed the first barrage, but cracks of red light spread across the ceiling. Guards threw themselves around the queen and princess. Daniel lifted his free hand without understanding why. The cannon stopped. Commands flowed through him as naturally as breath. He redirected the satellites, severed their infected links, and ordered the Guardian constructs to form a containment lattice around the planet. Savara stared at the data pouring from him. You are controlling 12,000 systems simultaneously. I struggle with 3 cooking appliances. You are not reassuring me. I am not reassuring myself. The silence struck his mind again, harder than before. Daniel staggered. The throne hall became a burning battlefield. Leora vanished from his grasp. In her place stood a shadow wearing her shape. You will fail her, the presence whispered. Daniel nearly believed it. Then someone slapped him. He opened his eyes. Queen Elira stood before him, one hand raised. You hit me. You were disappearing. There must have been a diplomatic alternative. There was no time. Convenient. Her expression softened only slightly. My daughter believes in you. Do not make her wrong. Behind the queen, Leora stood protected by 2 guards, furious that they had pulled her away. Put me down. She shouted, kicking one armored shin. The guard winced. Your Majesty, she is surprisingly tactical. She bites, Daniel warned. I do not bite, Leora protested. Everyone looked at her. Not often, she added. The absurdity cut through the silence's grip. Daniel reached for the bond. Golden light erupted from his chest and crossed the hall to Leora. The connection was not power flowing from protector to child. It moved both ways. Her trust steadied him, his memories shielded her. He finally understood. The Guardian network had never been designed around one warrior. It was built around a promise shared by two minds. Open every channel, Daniel told Savara. To the fleet, to the entire planet. His voice traveled through cities, shelters, ships, and orbital stations. The enemy survives by isolating us, he said, so nobody stays silent. Across Velaris, millions answered. Voices flooded the network. Songs, prayers, arguments, frightened jokes, children calling for parents, soldiers shouting positions. The devouring silence recoiled from the sheer weight of living thought. Daniel directed that wave into the Guardian lattice. The black shape above the planet cracked. Light poured through it. The ancient constructs closed their hands, compressing the enemy into a sphere no larger than a shuttle. With one final command, Daniel hurled it toward the system's sun. The darkness vanished in white fire. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the palace systems announced, immediate extinction probability reduced to 12%. Daniel looked at the ancient machine. That still seems high. Several ministers remain in command positions. Queen Elira laughed before she could stop herself. The court joined her, first nervously, then with exhausted relief. Daniel's knees finally gave way. Leora escaped the guards and caught him badly, which meant they both ended up sitting on the glowing floor. She wrapped her arms around him. "Dad stayed," she whispered. Daniel looked at the quiet sky beyond the windows. This time, he did not correct her. 3 days after the devouring silence burned inside the sun, the palace still smelled faintly of melted circuitry, medicinal foam, and the tea Commander Thalen had spilled during the evacuation. Daniel sat beside a restored window overlooking Velaris, watching repair drones stitch silver lines across the damaged towers. Above the city, the ancient Guardian constructs had folded themselves into quiet rings around the moons, no longer weapons but watchful monuments. Savara stood behind him, reading the final neural scan. "Well," Daniel asked, "you remain mostly human." "Mostly. You now understand 17 extinct languages, can interface with planetary defenses, and attempted to repair a food dispenser by speaking to it in pre-dynastic military code. It was refusing to give me coffee. It surrendered." Daniel considered that useful skill. The quantum memories inside him had settled. They no longer felt like strangers forcing their way into his thoughts. They were distant voices, histories preserved without swallowing his own identity. He remembered guardians who had died beneath alien suns, yet he also remembered burning toast in his apartment on Earth and pretending it was intentional. Both belonged to him now, but neither controlled him. The throne hall had been repaired for the formal gathering. Nobles, diplomats, soldiers, and scientists filled the chamber where Leora had first run toward him. This time, nobody hid beneath a bench, though one minister had requested that the benches be removed for security. Queen Elira stood before the restored throne, wearing no crown. Her long ears were decorated only with small blue stones, and exhaustion softened the authority in her face. "The Guardian network is awake," she announced. "The infected systems are being reclaimed. The worlds that lost contact are not empty. Survivors have been found." Relief moved through the hall. "The ancient bond was misunderstood," she continued. "It does not declare ownership, blood relation, or political authority. A guardian does not rule the protected heir. The bond exists because one life freely chooses to stand beside another." Her gaze found Daniel. He had spent most of his life avoiding promises large enough to change him. Diplomatic missions ended. Assignments expired. Relationships became messages answered too late. He had called it freedom because that sounded better than fear. Leora had destroyed that careful distance in less than 10 seconds. The princess stood near the throne, trying very hard to appear royal while secretly feeding a ceremonial sweet to a hovering maintenance drone. The drone beeped. "You saw nothing," she whispered. Daniel smiled. Elira raised one hand, and the ancient golden symbol appeared above the chamber. "Daniel Vale, The crown recognizes you as guardian of the royal line and voice of the awakened network. A servant approached carrying a black and gold mantle heavy enough to crush a smaller diplomat. Daniel eyed it. Does the position come with lighter clothing? No, Thalen said. I checked. A few nobles laughed. Elira stepped closer. You may refuse. The bond does not require you to remain on Velaris. The hall waited. Earth had already sent 14 messages ordering Daniel to return for questioning, medical examination, political debriefing, and what one official had optimistically called a brief discussion concerning control of alien military assets. He had ignored all 14. He looked at Leora. She did not plead. She simply watched him with the same certainty she had shown on the first day. Daniel faced the Queen. I will stay until the network is stable, the surviving systems are safe, and someone teaches your palace not to announce visitors' sleep quality. The final condition may be impossible, Savara said. Then this could become a permanent appointment. Leora's smile broke through her royal composure. The ceremony ended with more dignity than Daniel expected and less than Elira hoped. Thalen placed the mantle backward. Savara argued with the palace intelligence over historical pronunciation, and Leora declared that official guardians required dessert before military briefings. That evening, the three of them ate in a small room overlooking the luminous gardens. No ministers, no scanners, no weapons in the ceiling. Elira had dismissed the servants, though a tea drone hovered nearby with suspicious interest. Leora sat between them, telling Daniel that the bond meant he had to attend her astronomy lessons. I survived a galactic hive mind, he said. I should not be punished further. You also have to check under my bed for shadow creatures. Are there shadow creatures? No. Elira lifted her cup, usually. Daniel stared at her. For the first time, the Queen laughed without restraint. Later, Leora fell asleep with her head against his arm. Daniel carried her through the quiet palace while Elira walked beside him. When they reached the princess's room, the ancient door opened without scanning him. He placed Leora beneath a blanket patterned with moving stars. She stirred and caught his sleeve. Are you leaving? The old Daniel might have offered a joke, a vague promise, or an answer designed to preserve an escape. Instead, he sat beside her. No, he said, I'm here. Her hand relaxed. Beyond the window, the guardian rings brightened around the moons. Across distant systems, other ancient stations answered, one by one, not with alarms but with steady golden light. The galaxy was wounded, complicated, and far from safe. Daniel knew there would be new threats, political arguments and machines that considered rifles ceremonial. But he no longer felt like a visitor standing outside every door. When Elira quietly joined him beside the sleeping child, Daniel understood why the palace had recognized him before he recognized himself. A guardian was not someone chosen because he had never been afraid. He was someone who finally decided not to run.